Hello, guys. Welcome again to Ascension Workers. I'm Mike Wiskowski, and I'm here with Dr. Starr MacKinnon. Dr. Starr is a licensed clinical psychologist specializing in mind, body, spirit, holistic wellness. She has had a lifelong fascination with spirituality, consciousness, and everything esoteric. And Starr was one of the first people to join us on Ascension Works TV, recording a teaching series, which is turning out really great. And I just uploaded the next episode, episode 5, last night, and I took out a little snippet of it, which is the snippet that you called the emotional expansion exercise. But that'd be pretty good for people to have as a convenient clip, and also we'll make that free for everyone to look at, because I feel like this is some really great material I've been releasing, and we're really grateful for you for joining on the platform and helping people get this information out. So, would you like to share anything to start out with about yourself and how you got into this path and what interests you and what your goals are?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to join today. And it's definitely my pleasure and my honor to be a part of the series that we put out together. Any opportunity for me to be able to reach a broader audience, I'm just so grateful for. So in terms of myself, I grew up in just outside of Seattle, Washington, in a non-religious, non-spiritual family, but I found myself very in tune with the trees around me and found myself doing very odd things for a little girl, like staring at a candle flame in my room for hours and practicing. Basically, what I was doing was practicing focusing my attention and my consciousness, and I didn't know what I was doing back then, but yeah, it started very young for me. I was kind of an odd duck. I didn't really fit in because I thought about things and saw the world very differently, which caused me to really have a struggle with myself earlier in life and feeling like there was something wrong with me, or, that I was just kind of an oddball. And I struggled through a lot of challenges in my upper teens with drug addiction and just sort of tuning out from my light because it was too much for other people and I didn't understand it either. And then I was able to free myself from that experience on my own, which was very powerful. And throughout my whole process, I had been exploring spirituality and anything that I could get my hands on and following multiple different spiritual teachers and practicing forms of meditation. But once I entered recovery and stopped tuning out from myself in my mid-20s, my spiritual journey really accelerated. And there's been a series of other events along the way that have really catapulted me forward, like the sudden death of my only sibling. And I also walked through the experience of healing an aggressive form of cancer, what the doctors would call spontaneously. They didn't quite believe that I couldn't do it with all of their tactics and techniques. But yeah, so I've had a lot of my own personal experiences along with the use of psychedelics. I think that's helped me to really enhance my experience of life on this planet. And I became a psychologist, which was a dream of mine for a long time. But as these events continued to happen in my life, I decided to turn my focus to serve the spiritual community, because there's a lot of counselors and psychologists that might call you crazy or even psychotic or, delusional if you come to them and you share some of the things that the spiritual awakening community is going through. And so it's my honor to hold a space for anybody who's having odd or unusual experiences or encountering other types of beings or entering other types of dimensions through different experiences.
I can stop right there and ask, so are you able to offer remote sessions to people? Is that what you do?
I do offer remote sessions. Yes, I can Zoom with you just about anywhere you are. Sometimes the time zones get a little bit tricky when I'm seeing people on the other side of the world, but usually we can make it work out. Yeah, so I can see you just about anywhere that you are.
And so how would people get connected then?
So you can connect with me through my website, which is flourishwithstarr with 2Rs.com. And I do want to say that right now, because there's been such an influx of people looking for these services and so many more people awakening on this planet, I do have a fairly full caseload at this time. And so there is a little bit of a wait. If you felt like you were inspired to work together, it might be at least a few weeks out. But it doesn't mean that I don't want to work together, or that there isn't a way that we could connect and learn from each other. So feel free to reach out to me if you're feeling inspired after reading my website or listening today.
That's really great. Yeah, I've noticed that the range of issues people are facing in our community is so big, and there's so many things that people can be going through that they get looked at as they're crazy, like you said. And I just started some meetup groups in town, and I've noticed it's like that's practically the main thing that's needed for a lot of people is therapy. They just need somebody to talk to and to process some of the information that they feel that they're having to process that doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so do you see any patterns that, like, are people going through shifts that seem to be based on the times that we're in?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I definitely think that there are certain patterns and themes that play out in the awakening community. Oftentimes people on the spiritual path, in my opinion, and what I've witnessed, suffer a lot more challenges and traumas. And I think that, it was designed that way to sort of break us open and challenge us to turn inward, more so than, someone else who may not have chosen to walk such a spiritual path in this lifetime. So oftentimes they grew up in families that were very dysfunctional or traumatic, or have suffered very challenging life experiences, and almost always have felt alone in it, almost always have felt like their family or friends didn't really understand them or couldn't support them. And then they start doubting themselves. They start doubting, am I crazy? What the heck is actually going on here? Who am I? And do I acquiesce to what everyone else is doing and saying, or do I continue to walk my own path and just try to figure it out? But yeah, I think the COVID epidemic also created sort of a mass contraction for the planet, for people who are forced to go inward and forced to be pushed closer into relationships with each other, with their partners or people that they were in isolation with. And so I think it actually created a larger catalyst for change in terms of people's inwards reflections and inner work, and also their relational work, and really evaluating, am I living a life that I'm in alignment with or not?
Yeah, it seems like a lot of stuff is kind of repeating patterns even from childhood too. And one of the things I love in the raw material is that they say, the book's called the Raw Contact books. They say that people who are positively oriented will often choose more challenging life experiences. They won't pick the easy life. They'll pick the harder life because they know that there's more potential benefit to get through those blockages that maybe that existed from previous lives, or maybe it's something that they just felt that they wanted to go through in this lifetime to open their hearts more, or give them the catalyst to potentially open their hearts more and break through a lot of walls. It feels like there's a lot of potential people have when they really dig in and get through some of the hardest things in their I guess their history, their childhood traumas and the fears. So yeah. Do you feel like we're kind of just living our childhoods over and over again until we work through it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's part of the game that we're playing. I think we come in as, more of a pure essence with a framework of a personality. And then I think we're conditioned in a certain way by our early childhood experiences and relationships. And then we're sort of playing out that wounding and some of that patterning until we heal at a deeper level. And that healing process is what really helps us to evolve and remember who we are beyond that conditioning and beyond those experiences. And that's what's so powerful. And that's really where the learning is, and the expansion of awareness occurs, as well as we start to remember, oh, well, I'm not these beliefs that I've developed, or I'm not the choices that my prior family members made, and I'm something more than that.
Do you think people have to make a connection to childhood when they're processing their issues, and that they seem to be current issues? Do you think they have to go back there?
That's a really great question. There are a lot of therapists that will spend most of their time in childhood. And I'm someone who believes that it's important to reflect on where you came from, but not to stay there. I think it is worth at least looking at together, even if it's just briefly, what your initial conditioning was. But more so, my focus is what's going on now. What is your relationship with your mind like now? What are your relationships with yourself and others like now? And where do you want them to be? And what's getting in the way of that, and how do we shift that? But I do think people can get lost kind of cycling around in what was in the past, and I don't know that it really serves the healing process as much as just trying to move forward differently from here.
Yeah, I've noticed it seems like the roommates that I've had, the people that I've been close to, they kind of have aspects of my mother and father in them, and sometimes aspects of my siblings. And it seems as though the mother and father karma seem to be more directly connected to my core personality distortions. But at the same time, seeing it played out in different people over and over, it's kind of like different mirrors, different angles of the same mirror, I guess, but slightly different personality characteristics allow me to sort of explore what is it about me that I'm wanting to see, I guess. What is it about me that's still triggered? And so, yeah, I found a lot of value in seeing how much is this person like my dad, how much is this person like my mom, and how much is this person like me.
Yes, it's so magic the way that life works that way, that all of these external characters and circumstances are really just shining a light on what needs to be healed within us. And I'm glad that you said that that's then what I'm looking at. Oh, what is this bringing up in me? Because that's really the only piece we have control over is, what can I do with that to become a more aligned version of the being that I want to be?
It also seems like there's a lot to do with people's like ambitions and drive in life, that it's kind of like on a cyclical pattern. Some people may be stuck in like wanting to see a particular kind of success for themselves that may be connected to something that they felt their parents wanted to see in them. At least that's the way I feel like I'm kind of processing that right now. And it's like, understanding what actually matters in life is kind of like a question I have to keep coming back to. What is the true abundance for me? Keep coming back to the spiritual path.
Yeah, I love that question too. And I had a feeling that was going to come up today, which is this idea of purpose, right? And so many people, I think, get caught up in what purpose really is and what it means and what it looks like. And I think that a lot of the idea of what our purpose should like is conditioned into us by our families and our cultural norms and society. And I think especially those of us on the spiritual path start questioning that sooner rather than later, of like, gosh, even though I have this degree or I have, this career, I sure don't feel fulfilled. I sure don't feel like myself, And even if they move in the direction of something that they do feel like is in alignment with them, you can still feel like you're not quite fulfilled or living your purpose. And so I personally think that our purpose is to become the fullest expression of divinity that we uniquely are in this lifetime. And that is about doing this inner work. And that was one of the whole purposes of this series, of this inner journey series, was to help you to more clearly identify what your true essence is and what the pieces are that are sort of influencing that and moving around it. Because we really feel like we're living a purposeful life when we can step into each moment, each day, as the brightest expression that we came to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And I find that there's also value in, like, if I feel like I'm not able to achieve my ambitions, to kind of step back and like recenter myself in the fact that, I've already found peace in my life, or peace at least is always available. And I don't have to always be, and I do wonder about like the connection between like our culture being more one of narcissists, and that there's always this quest to see achievement connected to something outside of ourselves. There's always this goal. But I feel like, making peace the goal, you realize gratitude is always available, but it always feels like there's walls to getting back to gratitude, that that seem to be part of this processing that's so challenging sometimes.
Yeah. And some of those internal walls, I think, are just the expectations that we've subconsciously built up for ourselves that equate to success, right? And I think you're right that our culture does value achievement and money and status as a signification of worth or value. And that's really, I work with people who are multi-millionaire businessmen, and they have very successful, looking at them, externally, have very successful lives, and they're miserable. And they feel no meaning in their life, and they don't like themselves, and they have zero peace in their heart, so those things certainly don't equate to fulfillment. And I do think that there's quite a lot of distortion built around, what that means and how to get there.
So what advice do you give people who are struggling like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that the most important thing is really getting in alignment with yourself, and one of the things that I also offer to people is when you look at end of life studies, when you look at people who are in hospice care, and they're really reflecting on the meaning and the value, and did I succeed? Did I live a fulfilling life that I can feel good about? And they certainly are not saying, I wish I would have gotten another degree. I wish I would have made another $50,000. I wish I would have bought another house. I wish I would have had more fame. They're almost always saying, I wish I would have slowed down to love more those around me. I wish I would have spent time enjoying the moments that really gave my life meaning, and that's exactly what you're talking about is, experientially each day, are you getting the most juice out of your life experience in terms of that, the feelings, the beauty that life has to offer, and the simplicity of those little moments, rather than, thinking these achievements are going to get us there.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting that, you could say the medical system even is trying to say people need to find happiness as an achievement through the pharmaceuticals that they're giving. And
Yes.
people always place the goal further along and try to figure out how to find drugs that'll do it. But of course, the most useful drugs that I feel are the most useful drugs is psychedelics seem to be off the table for most people around this country. Although, fortunately, Colorado and the state of Colorado, they just passed Proposition 122, which has now legalized the personal use and sharing of many natural plant medicines, which is really fantastic. It remains to be seen how far that'll go. And they're kind of setting up a body now, an official state body, to investigate how to actually begin administering these things in a very safe way. But I know that, a lot of people are kind of stuck on pharmaceuticals, and I don't know how common the problem is. I've heard statistics that most people in this country are taking pharmaceuticals. And I don't know if in general, those are actually deadening people's ability to actually go within and meditate and find peace. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, there's a couple. I mean, this is such a big conversation. There's several things I want to say about everything that you've brought up. One that I want to start with is the assumption of healthy, happy normality in this country, that if you're feeling down or you're feeling fearful, that there's something wrong with you and you need to get that fixed immediately. And the solution is to go and take a pill so that you can fit in with everyone else and not, people are so uncomfortable with emotions that the easiest solution is just taking these and kind of numbing the symptoms that come forward from life. Life includes sadness, and life includes fear and struggle, and I think the true difference between the pharmaceutical industry and approaches and something like psychedelics is that pharmaceuticals are essentially just a Band-Aid for the symptoms. They're not actually treating the root cause of what's underneath or what's causing those symptoms to be surfacing in the first place. And sure, they'll and I don't, get me wrong, I do think that for some people that pharmaceuticals has served them to find a place of balance and to find a place where they can function a little bit better in their lives, to do the deeper work, and they may choose to come off of them at a later point. I'm not someone who's going to say, they're all bad, because I do think that life also created pharmaceuticals for a reason. But I do think that we have better and longer standing and more deeper healing interventions that are becoming available to us. One of them being the psychedelics, which do seem to heal us from the inside out. They do seem to change our brain chemistry and the way that our brains wire together, the different sections of our brains wired together to heal depression and trauma and anxiety and a lot of things in a very rapid period of time compared to traditional therapy. So I'm a very big proponent of it. I have to be careful, because in the state that I'm in, it's not necessarily legal yet, but it is something. There's a lot of us practitioners are sort of on the edges, just paying very close attention to the research, which has been very promising for these substances. And I do think it's going to be a matter of time before it's legalized more generally in a lot of different states. And so those of us who see the power in it are trying to figure out how to approach these substances in a very safe and ethical and the most effective way for true treatment. Because I think one of the concerns we have is, yes, they're going to be legalized and people are going to be taking them, and kind of hoping to feel better, but they are not something to be, messing with, like, unconsciously, like just taking it and saying like, okay, well, now I'm going to be happy. In my opinion, there's a lot of respect that you need to have for the process and the medicines themselves, and going into it very intentionally and then integrating, the experience to really get the true full healing.
We could possibly transition into talking a little bit about this emotional expansion exercise concept. I've noticed that, like, as you're saying, that people often want to just numb, or they want to sweep under the rug the bad feelings. And I've noticed with like MDMA, for example, certainly I've known that the best use and the therapy sense of the use of MDMA is to actually have someone who's guiding the person who's on MDMA through their traumas. You actually go visit each thing, and somehow the way that the MDMA is helping a person release serotonin makes it so that all the negative, almost it's like a chemical thing that the body's doing when you have that memory, or that pattern that you're going through that seems very negative. When you go visit that, it seems like the MDMA puts you in a space where it doesn't have the negative feeling that it once had, even though all the thoughts and beliefs around it are still there.
Yes.
And so it's like when you can reapproach those from a different feeling. And then this also brings up the question of what is this relationship between our feelings and our thoughts and beliefs? And do we have to recognize that these are separate concepts, and just get to a better state where we're physically in a good space before we do our processing, and then really dive deep intentionally with the processing, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. I do think that compounds like MDMA are incredibly powerful, because they allow us to be in the presence of very intense fear and very intense sadness without being affected by it. And so we can just be there completely present with the experience itself and all the thoughts and the memories that are associated with it, without being overwhelmed by the emotional experience of the fear itself. And so in that place, we can really gain a different perspective and change the way that we are able to process through what happened. Because I think for a lot of people, when they're going into it in traditional therapy, they very easily get dysregulated. And that's what, when we're working with veterans and things like that, a lot of what we're doing is trying to keep them regulated and trying to teach them grounding and how to cope with the symptoms of that fear that come up when we're doing this deeper work. And MDMA just eliminates all of that. It just allows us to be completely with the trauma and the memories, and to sit together with it. I think there is something very powerful about doing it with a therapist who knows the background and knows your story and can say, so what do we see now, and what do we feel now, and really helping you to process and integrate that experience so that it no longer has such an effect on your psyche, and you can let it go and begin to truly heal and move forward from there. I'm really excited about the MDMA, and I think that psilocybin is another one that's those two compounds I think are going to be helping us to revolutionize mental health and healing as we know it.
And do you think that if a person actually has a strong enough will to actually like face their traumas, that they don't really need any drugs, they can just do it at any time?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do think that there are people who can do it without the substances. It's not easy, but there are people all the time that I'm working with who just feel like, I have to do this. I have to heal. I'm tired of living in fear, and they're willing to walk into it. It's very challenging, because their body responds. There's such a visceral response to the memories and the process that it can be very challenging and overwhelming. But it certainly is possible to do these things without, having to use substances to help.
There's a great quote in the Raw Contact about the subject of anger, and it basically says that there's two different ways to use anger. On the positive path, the person will who's trying to use anger to benefit others, they will actually intensify the anger. They'll love the anger in and of itself, which is a very strange thing, to recognize that anger is just like an energy that you can use. You can actually kind of expand your consciousness because of that energy that's coming up in you. And once you intensify that energy, you can actually learn to integrate it better. Without the intensification, apparently, it's much harder to do the integration of it. Mm-hmm. And then they say on the negative path, that's the path of control, where you're just kind of channeling the energy outwardly, but channel that energy towards the purpose of finding a new way to forgive, a new way to accept that which is perfect in the moment. Mm-hmm. That's the best way to actually like expand and utilize the emotions that are present.
Mm-hmm. Yes, right. Any emotion. So even beyond anger, you can use any deep emotion to, if you're really willing to embrace it and invite it into your experience and sort of let it move through you, it does increase your awareness. It does help us to evolve. And I think that's part of the power of emotional experiences, which I know Corey has talked about, that we're very emotional creatures on this planet. And so I think that we have a very high potential for using our emotions as almost as a spiritual tool if we're relating to them in an open and loving way, because they really do help to expand our awareness and our consciousness if we allow them to. But I think most people are wrestling with them or distracting from them or numbing, and because it's not socially appropriate, to feel these big feelings, and they're just trying to kind of get forward through their day or get forward through their life, or they're afraid of what it might do to them to fully open up to them. But that's really the key, to having a stronger relationship with yourself, building more trust in yourself by showing yourself you're capable of holding any emotion. And then once you let those really powerful emotions move through you, like anger or fear or sadness, you see that you're actually stronger and more expanded in some ways.
So do you think meditation is essential for this?
That's a really good question. I think I have been meditating for so long, and it's something that I recommend to anyone that I'm working with, that I won't say that it's not possible, to do this work and to continue to evolve without meditation being a part of it at all. But I will say that meditation is certainly something that helps to facilitate and accelerate the process. And I can't imagine my life without meditation. And I have witnessed it helping so many other people that I work with in terms of tuning in to their truth and their essence. I think there's probably other ways, of doing it as well. But I do think that it's one of the most powerful tools that we have.
And another subject that seems to be maybe connected, that so so meditation is something where it feels like we can just, regardless of what's going on in our lives, we can make it our priority to set aside a few minutes to work on ourselves without even having any agenda for what it is we're doing during that time period of time. But I also think it's possible, like with diet, like if we are very focused on eating a certain way that seems to be better, we can maybe break out of old patterns too that way. But do you feel that diet is essential, that we have to continuously focus on changing the way we eat too?
Mm-hmm. I do think it's something, again, that accelerates and supports the process very significantly. I do think that, how we choose to relate to food and what we choose to provide to our physical vessel can certainly increase our ability to be in tune with higher levels of consciousness and more in tune with our intuition. But
Do you have any
again,
recommendations there?
on diet specifically,
Yeah.
I recommend that you are in tune with your own vessel, because I think that personally, I'm someone who does focus on eating high vibrational foods, living foods, organic foods. But I do know that there are some people who feel like denser foods actually help them ground, and like things like meat and dairy and things like that actually help them to ground or to feel like they have more energy. And so I really think it's an individual process, but the key is being conscious. So being conscious of what I'm putting in my body and why, and how that's affecting my relationship with my body. How is my body responding to what it is that I'm choosing to put into it? Because I don't know that there is one specific diet for all human beings' bodies, because we're all slightly different chemically. And so for some people, they may benefit from eating some clean meats, that can help them to have more energy or feel more grounded in their skin.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. People are all different. Obviously, supplements can be that way too. I feel like there's certain herbs people can take and feel a bit more peace from that. I don't know if that's a nutritional thing or if that's like a prana kind of thing, where there's some kind of life force energy in the plants that is helping people have just a little bit more energy to get through what they're processing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But again, I think for some people, they may benefit from certain herbs and plants, and some people may not have that same effect. So it really is about tuning into what you're drawn to, and then paying attention to how your body responds, and your mind, how your mind functions as well, based on what you're putting in your body.
Yeah, it's very interesting that fasting teaches me a lot about why I'm eating too. Like
Mm-hmm.
the energy that I have with food. It's like there's almost like a subconscious um, energy that I'm placing on the food when I'm eating it. When I'm eating it aggressively or when I'm eating it unconsciously, that seems to be different than when I'm consciously eating it. It seems like it's more a peaceful experience after I've eaten it,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm aware of what I'm doing when I'm eating.
Mm-hmm. Yes, most definitely. And I think there's a lot of people that eat very unconsciously, and they eat in sort of a rapid way, mindless way. But I do think that food can hold intention and can hold energy. I mean, you may be familiar with Dr. Emoto's work with the water crystals. And so even people who are preparing the food, if they're preparing the food with love and gratitude versus, someone who's slapping a burger together and they're irritated that they're working that job, and then you eat it and you don't feel so great, I do think that energy and intention can be infused into just about everything. And food is one of those things that we can really be conscious about.
So I was thinking we could also dive into some common issues people have, like if someone is just completely depressed and they don't know how to pick themselves up again, and it seems like everything's just bringing them back to the downward spiral. Do you have any things that people can do that just kind of stop that spiral?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if someone comes to me and their main issue is that they're feeling depressed, they're feeling lost, they feel like they just can't get out of that cycle, it is going to be a very individualistic process of kind of hearing what are some of the different components of your life and what is some of your background. But there are, some main approaches that we use to address certain types of presentation like depression or anxiety or relationship issues, and for depression specifically, actually for a lot of the issues that come in, I would say probably 75% of it has a direct relationship to your mind and how you relate to your mind. And so depression especially is a tricky one because people are being really bombarded by a lot of negative, heavy types of thoughts and beliefs. And if they listen to a depressed mind is not going to tell you to get outside and get some fresh air and have some sunshine, or to call a friend, or to eat healthy food. And so if you're listening to that depressed mind and you're making decisions based on, what it's encouraging you to do, you can stay in that loop or even worsen that depression. So two of the key components for approaching depression are having a healthier relationship with the mind. And one of the episodes in the series is completely focused on mind techniques and how you can have a healthier, better relationship with your mind. And then the other is what we call behavioral activation in the field of psychology, which is essentially, even though you don't feel like it, getting yourself engaged in life. So getting your body moving, getting your skin out into natural light at some point during the day, and trying to be connected socially, even if you don't feel like it. They're reinforcing, even if you really don't feel like going, you're going to feel uplifted after you do those things. And it's also going to change and reinforce the chemicals in your brain that fight the depression.
Yeah, it seems like there's definitely something around being with other people, that their energy is kind of contagious sometimes. So finding the high vibe people to be with is a good idea. And I always recommend people find others around them on meetup.com. That seems like a really great resource locally.
Meetup is a really great resource. Yeah. And I do think that part of being around other people is just about getting out of ourselves, because I think even with a lot of mental health issues, we get so caught up in and almost obsessed with ourselves and caught in our own cycles of thinking. And so when we can be in the presence of others, it sort of pulls us out of that. It gives us a break. It gives us some relief from those patterns. And then when we come back into our own energy, it feels a little bit different.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And it feels like it's almost like a foundation of a spiritual path to be a little bit more focused on service to others than on service to self. And I've noticed with myself using the word me and my and I, and if my mind is continuously thinking about me, then it's almost just like I'm creating a movie that has no purpose. It's just like an endless distraction.
Yeah. Yeah. And, others are all reflections of us, so there's something to be learned, something to be gained. I'm paying attention even to the guy at the gas station, who's saying good morning and sharing some little thought with me. It's like, okay, well, so, these little reflections of different aspects of me have something to teach me, so when you live with that type of awareness, and even if you're not feeling great and you enter into a space, and I think, like you said, Mike, it is important to be conscious when you're not feeling like your best self, to surround yourself with people who are more conscious, or higher vibrational people, because you certainly don't want to surround yourself with people that are going to take you deeper into the depths. But I do think that, connection with others, even people that you don't know, can sometimes help teach you or say something to you that, gives you just what you needed to see things a little bit differently and move into a different space.
Yeah. And do you think that there are different voices in people's heads all the time that are like entities? Do you ever think of it in that way?
Mm-hmm. I don't, I do know that there are people who do live with things like DID, dissociative identity disorder, where they have developed different forms of identities based on traumatic experiences that they had to endure at a younger age. But I do think that there are just naturally very different aspects of ourselves, of our own being that lives within us. And some of those are very conscious and some of those are very unconscious, and so sometimes we get little glimpses of different aspects of us. And I think that's why it's important to do the deeper work, including shadow work, that really helps us to see some of those parts of ourselves that might not feel familiar, that might feel like we don't completely understand them or they feel different from us in some way. But oftentimes it's just aspects of ourselves that we've shut away intentionally because they're harder to look at.
Yeah, I've often noticed that people have different beliefs around it, but I feel like it almost doesn't matter what your beliefs are around non-physical entities, because if these entities are operating through your mind and we're all one, as one large conscious mind, this is the infinite creator's mind operating through these seemingly physical, outward, temporary forms. On some level, it's just a choice of what kind of being we want to be, and so choosing our thoughts seems to relate to the choice of the reality that we've selected.
Absolutely. I think that's dead on, that no matter what it is, and none of us really know, right? Like none of us can really be sure how it's actually all playing out. But what we can do is be highly aware of what our mind is giving us and be paying attention to what we choose to engage with based on what our mind is feeding us and what we choose to, choose in terms of action as a result of those thoughts. So that's the part of free will, that we get to consciously play a part in.
Yeah. Would you like to go into any more details about your journey? Have you gone through dark nights of the soul that led you to this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been through multiple very challenging experiences in my life. I think that one of the most challenging experiences for me was my cancer healing journey. And I was 36 years old when I was diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer. And I had 2 young children at the time. And I had been sort of sloughed off by doctors because I was very healthy and they didn't think anything really was going on. And so they just kept delaying the testing. And then by the time we actually figured out what was going on, it became a pretty serious situation. And of course, my family and friends were all wanting me to get treatment immediately and do everything the doctor said as soon as possible. And because I had young children and because I was frightened initially by the statistics, I did start to follow the traditional protocol. But after 2 weeks of being involved in the traditional protocol, I just knew in my spirit that it wasn't, I just couldn't do that to my body. And not to say that isn't the best choice for other people. For some people, it may be you're most in alignment with just walking through the full traditional process and supporting yourself spiritually or with alternative support practices. But for me personally, it really became a very clear point of choice for me between following my own inner guidance and following, all these opinions and expectations of others and, the social norms of just kind of doing what the medical system says. And so it was a very challenging time for me because I felt really alone, even at that time. My partner, who I was married to, decided to leave me during the first week of treatment. And my parents were freaked out that I was even considering, dropping out of treatment. And I think some of the other colleagues that I had, other psychologists, thought that I was pretty wacky, for just trying to heal myself with alternative methods. But the depths that I had to go into internally and connecting with that sense of resilience within myself was a very transformative process. And I was able to heal the cancer within a matter of about 3 weeks, completely in my body through diet and metaphysical practices and doing the deeper emotional work. And it really enhanced my trust in myself and my trust in the fact that there's a lot going on behind the scenes metaphysically, in life that I think people don't realize their own power. And until you have to walk through something like that, where you're forced to choose for yourself, sometimes it's hard to believe. But I've had the pleasure. I see my cancer as a gift in my life because it really helped me to learn my own power and learn that no matter what's going on in my reality or in my body, that I'm capable of shifting my consciousness and changing my reality. And I also think it was pretty stunning for the doctors, and the people in my life. And the doctors even insisted on doing like an exploratory surgery because they're like, no, like this, this is impossible, and so, I allowed them to do a small exploratory surgery, and there was no evidence of cancer found. And I think a lot of the people in my life were in awe. But it was also a very scary, lonely experience where I did have moments of deep fear and panic and terror and am I crazy? And, which I think is a part of a lot of awakening experiences where we're really pushed to the limits of our own beliefs in ourselves and in life. And once I had walked through that to the other side, though, I felt like I could do anything, that really anything could happen. And that I can trust myself and I can create the life that I want to be living.
Yeah, that's very powerful. So it almost seems like maybe this is the case with a lot of people where, so you had the belief at the start of the 3 weeks, you had the belief that this could be healed metaphysically, or maybe this could be healed metaphysically, but it wasn't like a sure knowing until you finally got through to the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think at the beginning when something like that happens, and I was younger, so it was a shock. It was totally unexpected. I think I didn't know what to think, and I had been living a life where I used the medical system very sparingly, unless I needed to, unless it was like for emergency medicine type of stuff, and like to use a lot of holistic healing. But I had to take some time to research, and I was able to find other people who had also felt inspired to try to heal in an alternative way, and relying on their faith and some of their practices. I really committed to myself at a certain point in time. I'm going to do this. I'm going to heal. I'm going to heal myself. And that point of commitment, I didn't really look back from. But it did take, moving from complete shock and terror and overwhelm to, okay, what are my choices here? And I just can't keep doing this to my body. This isn't how I'm going to heal my body. And, and then really committing to that practice and not looking back.
So I assume that this has given you a stronger faith, and the faith of others you mentioned is supportive. Do you feel that the people who are your clients need some of this faith imparted for them to be able to find that their issues actually can be solved with the deeper inner healing, as opposed to just looking for an outer solution?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. I think that, one of the interesting paradoxes is that most people are looking outside of themselves for what they need. And part of my job is to help them to realize that they really contain everything that they need to find a sense of peace and balance and purpose in their lives. But I have, shared at certain times, pieces of my experience to help them to see that that it is possible, to give them some of that faith, or even just to say, I have faith in you, and until you do, then just rely on mine. and just take the next step, right? Like let's not listen to what your mind is saying about whether you're going to get better or not. Let's just take the next step and see what your experience shows you. And oftentimes, if people are willing to step into their fear and do something different, they see like, oh my gosh, my life does get better, or I am capable of doing this. And then they start to realize that they can trust themselves and turn to themselves for what they need.
I suppose it has a lot to do with people's belief systems when they first come to see you. Do you feel like there's a difference between people who are like fundamentalist Christian? Do they have an openness to miraculous healing more so, or do they have a closeness to the potentials that everything is something that needs to be worked on within first?
Yeah. Yeah, it varies from person to person, because I have worked with people who have a strong Christian background, but they're very open, and they're very willing. And then I've worked with people who would identify as more spiritual, and they're more closed and avoidant. And, so it really, it depends on the person, and willingness plays a big part, willingness to just step into the unknown and get comfortable with the unknown, because that's where true change happens. But I just to be totally transparent, I have a screening process for when I take on new clientele, because I have such a wait list, and because I have so many people that want to work with me, that I won't work with people that don't have some idea of faith or openness in their life. It's just not a match for me, and we just won't be speaking the same language, because there are a lot of people who come to me and say, well, I need help with depression or anxiety, or my marital problems, or this or that. But, I'm a staunch atheist, and, that's just it. And I don't want to talk about it. And so, for me to hold the space and help you to get to that faith within yourself, you have to have even just a little bit within yourself to begin with. You have to have that opening.
That's very fascinating. Yeah, I don't know how people can be close to faith, and how that takes hold. How people want that to be the truth of the universe as something that feels more distant, and it's almost like a belief in separation is almost like the foundation from I guess the philosophy that I've considered with the law of one. Opening to love, opening to the positive nature of the source of creation seems to be a part of this process that is inspiring faith and inspiring the greater potentials. So do you feel like, gosh, I always wonder how to help everyone. It's like what are the real blockages with people? Do you think a lack of faith would something be something from childhood too? People just haven't addressed yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think sometimes it could come from a childhood with parents that were very close-minded and just said, this is the way life is. And then they never really questioned it. But also I've seen people who come from religious or spiritual backgrounds, and they just feel like, well, until I have the proof, until I know for sure, then really there's nothing. And any belief in something beyond that is crazy or outside of my, worldview. So, people are interesting creatures, and they come from all different backgrounds, and they really decide themselves. And, for some people, I think that they came here intentionally to, struggle with that idea of faith. And I do have some clients like that who really want to believe or want to have some sense of connection or faith in their lives. And that was the path that they are choosing to walk, is kind of coming from that place of complete doubt or complete separation, and then finding their way to, feeling more connected or having some sense of faith. But yeah, it's hard to generalize. I think that, yes, if you come from this background, that this is how you're going to turn out, and because I've seen it play out in so many different ways.
Are there any books you recommend for people
for developing a sense of faith?
Well, anything on the spiritual healing path.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness, that's such a question. I mean, there's a lot of books, obviously the Raw series are great. I think that introductory books on spirituality, like Michael Singer's books, The Untethered Soul, Eckhart Tolle's books on the power of now, just really starting to connect with this idea of a presence beyond the mind and beyond your conditioning. I think Joe Dispenza's work can be really powerful in terms of looking at how to be more aware of the consciousness that you're emitting and being in control of writing a new story and creating a new outcome. But yeah, it really depends on the person that's in front of me. I think the other book that's been really helpful for a lot of people is the book Self-Compassion by Kristen Neff. And I think that the field of self-compassion has just been growing and growing and growing because we're such a critical society that's so overcome by the judgments of others and ourselves. And so I think that book, and I think she also has a workbook now that is very helpful in terms of looking at how you relate to yourself in your own mind and how you can be more loving and forgiving of yourself and of others as a whole.
Yeah, it seems like forgiveness seems central. I kind of equate forgiveness and acceptance also. It's almost like also a word that seems to mean freedom from attachments. We're just letting go of the things we're holding on to with all of our beliefs and ideas around, why the world has to be in this negative light that we're holding it in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think forgiveness is a really key spiritual practice, and it really isn't about condoning anything, but it's about releasing its hold on us in the present, and so that we're no longer carrying the density or the weight of those experiences or what it brings up in us, so that we are free of it.
You feel like you had to forgive something in order to be healed of cancer?
I did have to forgive, certain relationships in my life. I had to forgive myself, for living in shame of who I was and not allowing myself to really step out into the woman that I want to be. But yeah, I do think that, forgiveness is a process. It's never a one-time thing where it's like, okay, well, I forgive my mom or I forgive my partner. It's a continual process of living in forgiveness for the fact that we're all humans and we're all playing very specific roles in each other's lives, and there's gifts in all of it, even if it's very challenging. But no longer allowing that to bring down our frequency or create density in our field by holding those things. I think that's the importance of forgiveness, because then it allows us to live in a lighter, clearer, more loving way if we can practice living in forgiveness.
And it seems like it takes us more into the present too. A lot of times it seems like when we're focused on the future or the past, it's because of something that we're holding on to, or feeling that there has to be something different than the current present moment. And it's like everything is just a distraction from finding the peace in the present.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree with you that I think if we don't consciously practice forgiveness, then we sort of wear that lens in our present, and it affects our ability to really take in a new experience or to create a new reality if we're walking around with that lens.
Well, it looks like we've reached about an hour. I know you have to get going soon. I think we could wrap this up however you'd like. If you'd like to share anything else about your journey, anything that you think people, or also, I'm kind of curious. It's like, what are the things you see people dealing with, and what do you think our audience is dealing with that maybe they could use some pointers on?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that most people who come to me that are looking for support around spiritual awakening are looking to peel back these layers of conditioning and beliefs and old behaviors to reveal, the truth of who they are and a more aligned version of who they are, so that they can then step out into the world and have a bigger impact, and ripple in the fabric of consciousness, so to speak. And so that's what a lot of people come to me, and they feel like when they're going to other therapists that they're getting tips and tricks for how to be less stressed, or, how to stop being so negative or things like that. But They're not looking at the bigger picture of, how do you really release some of these patterns of conditioning and patterns of thinking and patterns of behavior and patterns of choosing specific relationships, that can help you step into the version of you that you're really wanting to be. And then how do you also attune to that broader version of you? So that's really, the later part of our work together is not only kind of peeling back these layers of what prevent us from being fully who we are, but then how do we really embody that essence? How do we really embody that light in a way that serves us to our fullest, highest potential, and then also serves the world in turn?
Do you think that we all share a common purpose?
That's a big question. That's the ultimate question. I do think that we are here all playing a part in the evolution of life, and I do think that the one gets to know itself and understand itself more deeply through these individual expressions. And that, we come here to experience challenge and pain and mortality and this feeling of separation because we can't experience these things outside of embodiment. So I do think that we're helping life as a whole to evolve by coming in here and having these very different and dynamic experiences. So that's when I was speaking about purpose earlier, I think that that's how we can all do our part, right? Is by doing our own internal work and being the brightest expression that we can possibly be, which also inspires others to do the same. And it also releases a lot of ancestral and generational patterning that the people that came before us in our lineage didn't have the tools or resources or the awareness, or the willingness to do this work. And I think a lot of us on this planet at this time are willing. We're tired enough, and we're really wanting to do it now to free our lineage of these types of patternings and to not pass it forward to future generations. And that's really how we're going to create a different humanity.
Yeah. And it's great that it feels like, we have enough guidance. Maybe our higher selves we're being guided on paths that we kind of can't go wrong because we keep getting the lessons, we keep getting the opportunities. And it's like, everything is working out one way or the other, right?
Right. Yes. Everything's here to serve us. There isn't really anything wrong. Even our deepest, darkest moments are some of the biggest gifts. So it's all about how you're approaching it, how you're staying aware with it, how you're opening up to whatever life is bringing you, whoever life is bringing you, so that you can learn and grow from it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So finding the reasons to be grateful in the moment seems to be continuously the trick for me.
Mm-hmm. Gratitude. Yeah, there's gratitude is so powerful. It's certainly something that I practice personally in my life throughout the day, multiple times a day. I think it is something that really helps us to attune to our true essence, no matter who we are. I think that, living in a state of gratitude gets us closer to our truth, and it's contagious, when we're walking around in gratitude, then people feel that and people are more inspired to do that as well.
Well, I'm very grateful for this conversation today. Do you have anything else you'd like to get into or share?
I think we covered a lot of ground. Yeah, I'm excited to release the rest of the series. I know that the video that is just being released is more so on the topic of emotions and how to have a healthy relationship with your emotions. Next, we're going to be talking about our relationship with our body. We're going to go more deeply into relationships and how relationships help to support our evolution. And then we're going to be talking a little bit more about, how more specifically to live as essence, how to live more in tune with our higher self, so to speak. And then putting all of these pieces together to hopefully be the best possible versions of ourselves. So I am really excited to continue putting those out for the community. And I welcome any questions, even if you don't feel inspired to work together directly. I'm always open to connecting with people from the community. If you feel inspired to reach out to me or you have a question or something to share, I would love to hear from you. We're all in this together. So I'm really grateful to be a part of all of it as well.
And I'll make sure to hook it up so that the comments that people leave on the videos on Ascension Works TV should go to your email address so you can interact through there too.
Yes, yes. Please feel free to ask questions, or if there's anything you need clarified, I would be happy to elaborate or, to connect with you more. So feel free to reach out.
All right. Thank you again, Starr. This is really wonderful. And I thank you again for this awesome series. I know people are loving it, and I hope people continue to tune in Ascension Works TV and check out your next episodes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mike, for the opportunity. It really is a pleasure. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Yep. Till next time. Take care.
Bye.